Kakadosh Boker Or Masechet Bava Metzia daf Amud Aleph 98.1. We're just going to start on the last line on the two dots of Peitet Amubet 89b. The Gemara says, "Taru Rabbanan." We learned in a Braita. Parot amrakesot bitvua. We're talking about that somebody that's going to be chosem a para, which they are going to be stamping upon the tivua in order to get rid of the klipa. Meaning you have the grains, and they're going to be trampling or do stomping, whatever you want to call it, on top of the grains in order to get rid of the klipa, in order to get rid of this external shell. Okay? The adashot, right? Bitruma u'maseh, or they're going to be dashed, they're threshing, whether it's in truma maseh, en over mishum bal tachsom. So they're not going to be over on the isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho. He comes and he says, because the melacha is the first one, which is basically taking away the shell, is after the gemar melacha of the tevua, from the time of the disha, right? And therefore he's not going to be chayav. So he comes and he says that afterwards also, right, in the second case, is because the isur of chasima, right, is only said by daish, just like we saw this morning's parasha, right? And therefore there's no dashim by truma maser. So he comes and he says, aval mipnei maritain, but because of the isur of maritain, mevi bul, right, meotomi, you're going to bring from the tvua, from that species, the tolela betraxlin, the traskelin, and you're going to be tole asal, the basket, right, in the tzavara behema, in the collar of the animal, right, shebefia, and it's going to be eating from it. So you come, you put a little tiny thing. It's a very interesting invention. Yeah, you put it right by its neck. It's going to be eating from that little tiny thing over there. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, right? Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, "Mevi karshenim betolela shakarshenim yafot la minakol." He says, you know what you do? You're going to bring different types of grains. We're talking about usually it's seeds or whatever it is, and you're going to put it in the basket. Why? Because the karshenim, right, is the best out of everything. Here it says here you're allowed to put it, right? But he's just adding that you could put also karshenim, which is like another type, even though it's another type of species, it's good for the animals, so therefore you're allowed to do that as well. So says the Gemara, Urmini, we have a contradiction. You're right. The first part was the same. The parot amraksot, but tevua, there's no problem of lo tachsom shor bedisho. Hadashot betruma maaser over mishum bal tachsom. The one that is going to be doing the dash by truma to maaser is going to be over on bal tachsom. The nochri adash beparato shel Yisrael, a nochri which is going to be dash, right, with the para of a Jew, en over mishum bal tachsom. So he's not going to be. That means if the Yisrael comes and he tells him chasom parati, right, and do the dash, he's not going to be over on bal tachsom. Okay, so this is the goy that's doing it with the para of a Yisrael. Okay, so he says why? Because obviously the goy is not mitzuveh on this, not one of the seven mitzvah enough. So there's no yisur for the goy to do that. But Yisrael, which is doing it with the parato of a nochri, he is over on bal tachsom, because basically since the Jew, that means even though the animal does not belong to you, but the fact that you are muzzling the animal, right? The animal doesn't belong to you, but it doesn't matter. You're muzzling that. You are over on lo tachsom shor bidisho. So says the Gemara, kashya truma. Kashya maaser. You have a question from truma in the first braita and truma in the second braita, and you have a question from maaser in the first braita to maaser in the second braita, because in the first braita we said that you're not going to be over, right, during the time of trumot masrot, right? You're not over, and here we're saying that you are going to be over. So says the Gemara, bishma truma la kashya. You could answer up truma. You answer up truma. Kam be truma, the kam be gidule truma. There's a difference between truma, right, which means the first braita that it says that there's no isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho is talking about truma mamash. The second braita that you said that you are going to be over is talking about gidule truma, which means it's not real truma, it's only truma miderabbanan. So he says, for example, if you take the zra'im of truma and you plant it, that's called gidule truma. So right, it's an offshoot, right? It's an off. So he says that chachamim come and they made a decree that it's considered truma. And therefore, this is one of the 18 things that the machloke between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, okay, and that the Bet Shammai actually won, right? Those were one of the 18 things that they actually won. And the reason for this Gezerah is because if a Jew's going to come and plant Truma, in order to become Patur from giving it to the Kohen, or maybe another Kohen will come and bring Truma Tmeah, right? He's going to wait it until the time of the Zriya. He'll plant it. And then what's going to happen is, he's going to say there's no problem. Imagine you have Truma. What happens usually when Truma gets Tameh? When it's Tameh. What happens when Truma becomes Tameh? You burn it. Yeah. So now, you know what happens? Very simple. The guy's going to say, why am I going to burn it? Wait 1 second. I'm going to wait another month. It's a planting season. I'll plant it. Afterwards, it's going to grow again. And that growing, there's no problem with Truma. Says the Gemara, it's a sur. Why? Maybe you're going to eat it. Maybe you're going to eat it in between. So therefore, the mira gzera, that even though if you plant it and now it's going to be, it's always still considered Truma midrabbanan. It's called Gidule Truma, it's Truma midrabbanan. In order that you shouldn't come and start benefiting from it now, and then you're going to come and you're going to wait for the planting season. You're going to say, why am I going to burn it? Why am I going to get rid of it? I'm going to wait. I'll use it. I benefit from it. And therefore, it's going to be a problem. So one of them was talking about Truma, and one of them is talking about Gidule Truma. And therefore, there's an Isur of Lo Tatsom Shor B'Disho, right? Because only by Truma, Maaser, by Truma itself, there's no Over of Lo Tatsom Shor B'Disho. But Maaser is going to be a question. V'chi Teima, now if you're going to tell me, Maaser, Nami Lo Koshia. The Maaser is also not going to be a question. Kam Maaser, Kam Gidule Maaser. Here we're talking about Maaser Sheni Mamash. And here we're talking about Gidule Maaser. So say the same answer. One's Maaser, one's the Gidule Maaser. Just like you told me, one's Truma, one's Gidule Truma. So he says, Bishlema Gidule Truma ki Truma. I understand you could actually tell me that Gidule Truma is like Truma. And therefore, it's going to tell me that there's going to be an Isur of Lo Tatsom Shor B'Disho. But Gidule Maaser is actually considered 100% Chulin. That means they never made such a decree by Maaser. Only by Truma did they say that when you take the original Truma and you plant it, that Truma is called Gidule Truma, and therefore it's like Truma. The Rabbanan. By Maaser, we didn't do such a thing. The Trambas, we learned in the Mishnah, Gidule Tevel Gidule Maaser Sheni. When you have Gidule Tevel or Gidule Maaser Sheni, Chulin, it's considered Chulin. And therefore, if it's 100% Chulin, what's the chidush of telling me now, Lo Tachsom Shor B'Disho? It's like any other regular food. Obviously, Lo Tachsom Shor B'Disho. So what's the chidush then of telling me on Maaser? So he says, Ela la kashia tzan question, ha b'Maaser Rishon, ha b'Maaser Sheni. We're talking about there's going to be a difference between Maaser Rishon and Maaser Sheni. Maaser Rishon, there's no kedusha, and you're allowed to give it to an animal to eat. And therefore, he comes and he says, right, there's an Isur of Lo Tachsom Shor B'Disho. Okay? So therefore, right, he's allowed to do whatever he wants with it after you already separated the Truma to the Kohen. You could even give it to the animal. So therefore, there's an Isur, right, of Lo Tachsom Shor B'Disho. He says, here we're talking about Maaser Sheni. And Maaser Sheni, we know it has Kedusha because you have to eat it inside of Yerushalayim. And therefore, right, he comes and he says, okay, here we want to say that we're going according to the opinion of Mamon Gavoa, right? Which means that the second that you separate Maaser Sheni, it's considered Mamon Gavoa. It's not even considered your money. It's considered the money of Hashem. And therefore, he comes and he says, there's not going to be any Isur of Lo Tachsom Shor B'Disho. That is going to be the first answer to answer up between Maaser and Maaser. Maaser Rishon, Maaser Sheni. Right? Because it cannot be between Maaser and Gidule Maaser, because we already said it's the same thing. Meaning, Gidule Maaser is 100% Chulin. So if there's no chidush of telling me that it applies Lo Tachsom Shor B'Disho, because it's a regular Chulin. Second answer, if you want, you could answer. Ha veha Maaser Sheni. Really, Be'emet, both cases, we're talking about Maaser Sheni. It's not a question. Ha Rabbi Meir, Ha Rabbi Yehuda. What did I already give you the introduction? I told you that there's going to be, right, a machloket. The machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to see right now, is what is Maaser Sheni? Meaning, what is the status quo of Maaser Sheni? Who does it belong to? So, Ha Rabbi Meir Damar, this is Rabbi Meir that he says, Maaser Mamon Gavoahu. According to Shtat Rabbi Meir, the mamon, it's mamon gavua, right? And therefore, there's no isur of lotasom shor bedisho, because when it says lotasom shor bedisho, it's your dash that you're going to be over if you're going to come and you're going to muzzle the ox when you're going to plow. Only lotasom shor bedisho. But if you're coming and you're using it, you're doing it for right maaser sheni, which does not belong to you, so there's no isur. So therefore, even though you're going to muzzle it, there's no isur. Rabbi Yehuda, this is the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar, that he comes and he says, Maaser Sheni Mamon Idiotu. The Maaser Sheni belongs to the human beings, and therefore, meaning it's the private money of the human being. Now, right? If it's going to be the private, now there's a condition. That's fine. The condition is you could only eat this type of food in Yerushalayim. That's fine. But at the end of the day, it still belongs to you, and therefore, there's going to be an isur of lo tachsom shor, right, bedisho. Okay, so that's what's going to be the difference between them. Okay, obviously there's going to be a few nafkaminas, right? For example, can you marry a woman with it, right? So now, if it belongs to you, right, then obviously yes. If it belongs to mamon gavoa, obviously not, right? So therefore, there is different ramifications of who does it belong to. Again, there's still conditions. Conditions you have to eat in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. Right, but still, the question is, does it belong to you or does it belong to you? So says the Gemara, Echidami. Yeah, exactly. You could eat it in Yerushalayim. So says the Gemara, Echidami. Right, what are we talking about exactly? So he says, right, that the Bema is coming and he's threshing, right, something that is already Truma Maaser. So he says, Kigon Shigdimo Bashibolim. The only time you can actually find a case where it's already going to be Truma Maaser is only going to be in a case where he already came and he took off the Trumot Maasrot before the Gemar Melacha, which is when it's still a Shibolim. But if not, why is he threshing now? Usually you would only take off Trumot Maasrot right, when you're at the end product, or the beginning. Here, how's he doing it? He says, no, that's why he already took off the Trumot Maasrot when it was still in the stocks. And that's why he's going to be patur when he's going to come and do the lotach som shor bedisho, because it doesn't apply by the trumot u masrot. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, and according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, that he says by maaser sheni mamon ediot, by choma. How does it belong to you? You have to eat it inside of Yerushalayim, of the walls of Yerushalayim. So he comes and he says, right, and therefore, if it says lo tuchal lechol b'sharecha masad ganecha, so for sure you're not allowed to give it to the animal, right? To eat from this maaser, you have to eat it inside of Yerushalayim. What's going on then? He says at the end of the day, the negative commandment, right? The mitzvah lo tasev lo tachsom cannot come and push off lo tuchal lechol b'sharecha. So how does that help now? So he says kigon shedash lifnim mechomat bet pagi. He says no. What he's doing is he's doing the threshing of the Maaser Sheni inside of the outer walls of Jerusalem. And therefore, since he's doing it inside the outer walls of Yerushalayim, you're still eating it in Yerushalayim, so there's no problem. Right? That means you're not transgressing any Avirah. Right? It's inside of Jerusalem, there's no problem. Yeah, it's Maaser Sheni. Right? As we already mentioned. And then you have all the different halachot that we spoke about until now. Okay? This is going to be the second answer. Third answer, Ibaite. My friend, you can answer another answer. Lakashi, that's not a question. Kan maaser vadai, kan maaser demai. Right? The first braita that says that there's no isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho by maaser sheni, we're talking about maaser vadai. What does that mean? You took off maaser sheni from vadai tevel, from something which is 100% untithed produce, and therefore there's no isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho. The second braita, where it says that there is an isur, we're talking about maaser demai. Maaser demai means that you are coming and which you're not really sure do you have to take off maaser or not, and therefore that maaser is only the rabbanan. Since we do right, it's not considered maaser. There is an isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho. So says the Gemara, hashta dati lahacha. Now that you're just coming and you're saying that that's the difference between them, whether it's maaser vadai, maaser demai, truma. So you could say the same thing by truma. We came and we answered by truma. One is truma vadai and one is gidule truma. Why don't you just tell me one is truma v'dai and one is safek truma? The exact same thing. Just like you answered by maaser, answer the same thing by truma. You're right. You answered me kidule truma. You didn't have to get to that. He says hashta dati lahachi truma namila kashia kam betruma v'dai ve'kam betruma demai. And you were talking about trumat safek, which is the demai. So says the Gemara, bishlema maaser demai ika. There exists the concept of maaser demai, right? Because of the amaretz. Elet trumat demai miika, but does there exist the concept of trumat demai? He says, why? Batanya, we learned in a bright of who Yochanan Kohen Gadol would be telat avidui maaser vegazal al demai. He was the one that came and was mivatel avidui maaser, and he was gozer on the demai. Lefi sheshalach bechol gvul Yisrael b'ra'ah shelo yim mafrishim el truma gdola bivad. He went and he found out that everybody in Eretz Yisrael, they were separating. That means even on Me'aratzot, they were still separating Truma Gdola. Remember, before taking off Maaser, you have to take off Truma. There's Truma Gdola. Okay, so that Truma Gdola, even the Me'aratzot were doing. So for they never made a Gezerah on a Trumat Demai. It doesn't exist, right? It was only in the Maaser that they were being Mizalzel. So on Maaser, they went and they said, okay, you have Maaser Demai. Right? But on Truma, they never made such a thing. They checked. They checked very well. They were all doing it properly. They were all doing it properly, except for the Maaser. That means the Truma, they did it. So says the Gemara, Elala Kashia, you're right, there's no question. Kam betrumat Maaser vadai, kam betrumat Maaser demai. Whoever told you we're talking about Truma Gdola? What are we talking about? How many types of truma were there? No, but gidule truma is a regular truma, but you just planted it and now it's an offspring. That's gidule truma. Which one? So it says the Gemara, Elala Kashia, Kam betrumat maaser vadai, ve'kam betrumat maaser demai. You're right. You just answered me by truma. Even the amaretz gives truma. But which truma? Truma gdola. So therefore, you cannot tell me that there's such a thing as trumat demai. Says the Gemara, no. Whoever told you we're talking about truma gdola, we're talking about trumat maaser. And there does exist such a concept of trumat maaser vadai, which obviously you're not allowed to give it to the animals, mina Torah, and trumat maaser demai, which is only the Rabbanan, which you could. Fine. Now we're going to come and ask a safek. We're going to ask like this. They came and they asked from Rav Sheshat. Mahu. Imagine right now an animal has stomach problems. So therefore, right, it's eating during the time of Melacha, and it's at the same time of entering one way, it's coming out the other way, and therefore you want to come, and it's basically it's not good for anything, not for the animal, not for you. So therefore, what do you want to do? You want to muzzle it. Are you allowed to or not? That's the question. Okay. So says the Gemara, Mishum demale lahu v'halo me'alala. He says usually the pirot that it's threshing, it's good for it, and here it's not good for it. So therefore, there's no isur of lo tachsom shobedisho, right? Or dimar maybe the chazio mitzah. At the end of the day, it's still suffering. You're right. Maybe afterwards it suffers when it's coming out the other way, but at the end of the day, it's seeing food and it can't eat, so it's suffering. Chazio mitzara. So Amar Leu Rav Sheshat wanted to answer. 22, we learned it. It says Rav Shimon Bar Yochai Omer, but I don't know. We have a lot of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai today. Yeah, yeah. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says, "Mevi karshanim vetolela." He says you're going to bring karshinim, right? How do you translate karshinim in English? Vetch. Okay, so karshinim. The tolela, you're going to hang it on the basket of its neck again. Because karshinim is always the best for it. Meaning, like what we said before, you remember you put a little tiny basket over here, and therefore when it's coming and doing all the work, all it has to do is puts its head down into the basket, it eats, and it continues going, and it's doing the work. Yeah. So he says, Shema mina, we learn from here. Only mishum demalelahu. Shema mina. So that's what we learn. We learn from here for the fact that it says that you could actually put a basket by its neck and give it kashirim because it's good for it. So if you learn from here that the entire purpose was because it's good for it. Here it's not good for it. So therefore you don't have any isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho. Okay, fine. Another question to do with lo tachsom shor bedisho. Ibailu, right? Ma'u shiomar adam lenochri chasom parati vedushba. Can you tell a goy to do it for you? Yeah, can you tell a goy to do lo tachsom shor bedisho for you? So you tell the goy, muzzle the animal, and do the threshing. Are you allowed to do that or not? So mi amrinan, do we say ki amrinan amira lenochri shvut hanemil inyan Shabbat isu skila aval inyan chasima de lav, right? They say isu lav lo. Maybe we're going to say that there's only isur of amira legoy to do a Shabbat. You know why? If somebody's mechalel Shabbat, what's the punishment? Sekila. So therefore, if he's going to tell a goy to be mechalel Shabbat, right, for him on his behalf, so therefore they prohibited it midrabanan. But the isur of chasima is only a negative commandment. So for to tell a goy to do a negative commandment, right? So even though he's doing it for me, it's not you understand? It's not a sekila. So maybe they didn't prohibit it. Maybe it's mutar. There's no isur of amira legoy in such a case. Or dilma, or maybe, one second, or dilma loshna, or maybe there's no difference. Meaning, am I looking at the outcome that 1 second? By the sekila, it's so powerful. So therefore, there I made a decree about amira legoy. And therefore, by Shabbat, you're not allowed to tell a goy. Amira legoy, not allowed to tell a goy to do a melacha for you. But by isur of chasima, it's only allowed. The negative, you're allowed to, right? Or maybe I'm going to say there's no difference. Why? Amira legoy is amira legoy, and therefore, once you're not allowed to tell a goy to be your messenger on Shabbat, so too you can't tell a goy to be your messenger to come and to be lo tachsom shor bedisho, right? What's the difference at the end of the day? So Tashema. So we're going to try to bring a proof. Nochri adash beparato shel Yisrael. What did we say before? We said in the Braita, when the Nochri is coming and using the parav, the Israel, right? He's not going to be over on bal tachsom. You remember we said there's no, he's not over on lo tachsom shor bedisho. Me'averu de lo avar, he's not going to be over, but isur alika. But there is an isur de rabbanan of amina legoy, because if not, so just tell him it's permitted to tell the goy to do it. Meaning we went and we said, if the goy is going to come and take the Jew's animal and do threshing, he's not over on lo tachsom shor bedisho. What do you mean he's not over? Tell him it's mutar lechatchila to do it. We didn't say that. Why didn't we say that? Because it's mashma that there's an isur, but he's not over. Meaning the goy, you're not going to do anything to the goy. But there was an isur of lo tachsom shor bedisho, so he's not allowed to do it. Huh? You're right. That's why over there, right? Since he's doing it on his own and he's not doing it for me, it's okay. So he's not over on the lo tachsom. Why? Because it's not one of the Shem Yisrael ben Enoch. But it's still an isur to do it. So I cannot come and say tell the goy lechatchila, right? To lachsom shor bedisho. I can't do that, right? So says the Gemara, Bedinu de isur namileka. No, really, be'emet, there's no isur also. There's no isur. The idea the Tana Seifa, now that the Seifa says the Israel hadash beparato shenochri over, Tana Reisha over and over. You wanted to deduce it from the wordings. He says, since in the Seifa, it's written in the Seifa that if a Israel does it, he is over on the isur, which means on the isur doraita lo tachsom shor bedisho. We said in the Reisha, he's not over on the isur, but really be'emet he's allowed to do a lechatchila. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. So therefore, what we're trying to find out is still, is there an isur, right, to tell a goy to do, right, lachsom shor bedisho or not? So Tashema. So they're going to try to bring a proof now. They went and they said to the father of Shmuel that he was a Mavel. Halin Toreh, these shvarim, these ox, right? Tzadik Amubet, 90b. Tegan vin armae, that the goyim they steal it from their owners. Umeganchin, right? Umeganchin yaton, right? And they used to come and they used to be mesares otam, right? Now, when they used to come and they used to castricize, I think we say in English, no? Castricize. So when they used to come and castricize the animal, right? And then they used to give it back to the owners. Now, the owners were ma'alimim ayin on this. Why? It was good for them, right? We have an avera, and we cannot come and castricize an animal, right? We're not allowed to, right? Even by, dogs, cats, all these things, it's a suit. There's a whole thing about how to do it. Is that, but you're not allowed to just come and cut. No. It's a problem. So now what happens? What happens is you have these goyim. They steal the animals, and when they steal the animal, right? They come and they castrate the animal. Why? Because it's easier, right? It's easier for plowing when it's already castrated. Right? It's better for plowing. So yeah, for sure. There's no doubt. The question is, right? What's halacha in this case? Because they used to steal them from us, and then they used to do it for us, right, on purpose, and then they used to give it back to us, and then ki'ilu, thank you so much for giving me back my animal. Now, obviously, it's so the halacha. The question is, what's halacha? So shalach lehu, he went and he said to them, ha'arama itavid behu, right? Since they did ha'arama, right? Arimu alayu vizdabnud, right? They're going to do arama also. They're going to sell it, which means if you already did it, in order that it's going to be better for charisha, for the plowing, so therefore give them a knas, right? That what? You can't plow with it, in order that you're not going to benefit from the avirah. So therefore, even though it's something isur of a lotas, it is a negative commandment. You see from here, you can't let the goy do it for the Jew. And kol sheken, you can't tell them to say mefurash. Meaning here, they didn't even tell them to do a mefurash, right? So if they didn't tell them to do a mefurash, and still we're going to make a knas that you cannot benefit from it, well, the more so there in this case. So Amar Rav Papa says, Rav Papa, it's not true. Why? Bnei Marava savrila kirbi chidka. Bnei Marava, they hold like Rabbi Chidka. The Amar that he says, Bnei Noach mitzuvin ala sirus. Bnei Noach are also commanded not to castrate the animals. Right? Why? The ka'avre, right? That means not only do they have the Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach, they have an Avirah also to castrate as well. They're not allowed to take away. No. Yeah? Right? 1 second. The ka'avre, right? And he says that they're going to be over then only favor Lutem Mishol, which means if right now they have an Avirah and you king now and you let them do this Avirah, so therefore it's going to be a problem. Okay? Which means that's why they came and they're going to do the, how do you call this? The Lifnei Iver. And once they have Lifnei Iver, there's going to be a problem. Okay? So, says the Gemara, like this. He says, Sava Rava Lemim. So Rava thought to say, right, Imacheru the Shchita. You know what? He thought to say the knas is that you sell it for shchita in order that they should not benefit from the sirus at all. Okay? Because when they're going to be sold for shchita, right, he comes and he says, so therefore, right, it's not going to go up because of the sirus. You don't get anything. If you're going to come and you're going to sell me an animal, you think I care whether it was already castrated or not? Because if you're selling me for plowing, that yes. Because mashallah. So Rava comes and he says you sell it for shchita, and shchita there's no difference whether it's going to be castrated or not. Amalo Abaye, so Abaye says dayan shekanasta lehem mechida. He says it's already enough that you already told them that they have to sell it, right? Which means it doesn't make sense that they're going to come and they're going to do all this balagan in order just to come and to sell it, because if they're already doing it, they want to benefit from it. They're benefiting is plowing, not to sell it. So therefore, they could also do it. So says the Gemara, Pshita, it's obvious. Beno gadol ki acher dami. If it's going to be obvious that the oldest son of the Balashor is like somebody else, right? Which means to do the knas, it's like somebody else. And therefore, it's already enough that he could sell it to his son because his son is not considered himself. But Beno katan mai, what about his younger son? Is that considered that Kilu is selling it to himself or not? So Ravachai asar. Ravachai said that it's asur. And Ravashi said that it's going to be permitted. Meneimar morzutra, hanau trei chasidei. Meneimar morzutra, and some people say it was these two chasidim, right, that we don't even have their names. Nechalfe adade. Used to switch it between them. So therefore, right, they used to come, get the goyim, Kilu, they would steal it. They would come, they would castrate it, give it back, and then they would switch it to each other. They would swell it, right? They would sell it to each other. Okay, so fine. So says the Gemara, Bae, right? He comes and he says, okay, here it says that many times, here it says in a footnote that really Be'emet, they didn't know that it was being done at the beginning. Meaning they didn't know that the Goyim were doing it. But now that they already found out that the Goyim did it, they did like even a stringency. They didn't want to benefit, so they just did hachlafot. And by doing the hachlafot, it wasn't a kilu they were doing arama, the kilu that they wanted to. No, they just found out. They said, okay, fine. You know what? We don't even want to benefit from it. So okay, we do ishloch manos. Yes. I just said the exact opposite. You didn't understand. One more time. These people. בדיוק, בגלל זאת אומרת, החסידות שלהם. זאת אומרת, הם באמת היו חסידים. Okay. Yeah? So, meaning they didn't have benefit from it. They didn't want to benefit from it. They didn't know about it. It wasn't a trick. Exactly. So since they didn't know about it, when they come and they get their animal back, they wanted to give themselves a knas, אפילו אם באמת לא היו ראויים לקנס. הקנס היה בגלל שאתה עשית משהו לא טוב. הם לא ידעו בכלל מזה, הם הסתכלו, לא רוצים לענות. החלפה. ואז כאילו הם עושים חומרה. Yeah? So by Rabbi Barchama comes and he asks the following question: Hoshiv la kotz befia. Yeah, Mao. There's another question to do with the chasima again, right? You didn't muzzle it, but you put a thorn in its mouth, right? Yeah, you're saying it's the same, doctor. What's the difference? You're putting a mask or you're putting a thing? Yeah. Nowadays, there's a lot of it says lo tachsom shor bedisho. There's a lot of lo tachsom adam be. You walk on the streets and you still have people with masks. You understand? But here you come, you put a thorn. What's the difference between a thorn, right, and the muzzle? So he says, right, what's halacha? Hoshiv la chasima me'aliyatai. So says the Gemara, I don't understand you. The kotz is the best. That's a muzzle. So ela, but rather yashav lo kotz befiyama. No, you didn't put it. It's already there. Are you obligated to take it out? Or you just leave it there. Meaning, right, the animal is coming, and now you're going to get it to start doing the disha. Yeah, so you come and you put it to do the disha. Yeah, and you realize, it's got a thorn. Are you obligated to take it out or not? That's the question. Not to put it there. Put it there for sure. It's not. That's muzzling, right? What's halacha? So, right, he comes and he asks another question also. Again, we didn't actually answer the question. Okay, another question. Hirbitzla, ari ibachutz. Imagine right now, right? He puts an ari right outside of it. Now, what happens is that the animal is afraid of the lion. So since it's not going to eat anything. So what's halacha? Yeah, what's halacha? Are you doing at the end of the day? You didn't do anything. You didn't put a kotz on it. You didn't put a thorn. You didn't muzzle it. You put a lion right there, right? Okay, fine. Another question. Sorry. So the Gemara asks again the same question. The Gemara says, he says, just like putting the thorn in its mouth was a good muzzle, so to putting the lion right beside it is also considered a good muzzle. So says the Gemara, Ela, you're right. The lion was already there on its own. Meaning you didn't put the lion there. The lion was already there on its own. So exact same thing as the thorn before. Fine. Another question. No, you. Yeah, what happens if you put the child, right, the egel of the bema, right outside? Now, what happens is that when they're worried about its child, he forgets to eat. It's a good trick. He forgets to eat. So therefore, right, what's the halacha? Yeah, haytat tzmiya lemayim, right, mahu. Or for example, let's say it's thirsty. Now, if it's thirsty and you don't give it to drink, it's not going to eat because the food is dry and it's going to get it. So it's not going to eat. So you're not muzzling it. You're not putting a thorn. You're not putting a. So what's halacha? Or parasla katablaya al gabedisha. Or you put, right, this is like skins on top of the threshing of the tvuah in order to cover it. What's halacha? Do you say that since it's going on the katabla, so it doesn't see it, so then it's lo tachsom shobedisho, because it can't see it? So maybe there's no isur. Yeah, that's what we're asking. So says the Gemara, Peshot me'achada. Out of all these questions, we could answer one. Yeah, how many questions do we have? One more time. The thorn, and again, we extended that we not extended. We changed that the thorn was there on its own. We had the lion, right? We had the child, we had the drinking, and then we had the covering. 5 different questions. Okay, so he says Peshot me'achada. At least we could answer one of these fikot, right? Which is the last one only. The Tanya was learned in the Braita, Rashay bala para la'ariv parato, right? Do you know that the bala para, right, that he's going to rent out his para, he could be mar'iv parato before giving it to the socher, in order that he's going to eat a lot from the disha. So imagine, I'm going to rent out my animal. I'm going to make sure it's going to be very, very hungry, and then I give it to the renter. And then blainara, it's going to eat by the renter. Yeah, it's you're allowed to do that, right? Latir, pekia amir, right? Or to permit the cash, right, before, right, that was already threshed, right, which means the Gemara is understanding now that when you're going to come and you're going to spread out the cash on the tevuah, it's like you're covering it with the or, and therefore, because you're covering it, and therefore you're allowed to do that. So from here, you see from here, there's no lotasur shodisho, but basically you're putting it on top in order that it should eat this. And then by eating this, it's not going to eat a lot of my field. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm being very, very smart. I'm going to give it another type of a food in order that it doesn't all eat all my crop. So says the Gemara, Shanehatam de Kachla. No. The question that we asked was, the 5th question was, you're covering it in order that it doesn't eat. You're answering me that it is eating, but it's just eating something else. So says the Gemara, okay, fine. Maybe you could answer it. What does that mean? You could open up the straw right in front of the animal in front of the beginning before it does the dash, in order that it doesn't eat. Why? Because once it's already going to be filled with cash, it's not going to eat my wheat. So you understand what I just said? I came and I gave it a lot of cash. Now it ate, and that's it. That's what they do many times with appetizers, right? Right? They don't want you to eat the main course. The main course is too expensive. So what do? They give you an appetizer and another one. And you think, oh, very good, but you eat and eat and eat. By the time it comes to the main course, it's already achila gasa. You understand? It's already, so therefore, yeah, you've got this problem, obviously. So, right now we're going to go to a new question. So again, we only came and we only, according to this answer, obviously, it's pashut that it's going to be different than what we thought at the beginning, because we're not talking about that you're actually covering it. It's just talking about that you're covering it with other food and therefore you're eating, but it's obviously cheaper food. And therefore that's when you're going to be permitted. But we did not answer the other 4 questions. Okay? Fine. Now we're going to go to another question, a new question. Ba'mineh Rabbi Yonatan Rabbi Simai. Ask Rabbi Yonatan from Rabbi Simai. Chasama mi bachutz mahu. What happens right now if you're going to be chosim, right, outside of the makom hadisha, and then afterwards you bring it in, right, and now it's going to start now, but it's already chasuma, meaning you didn't put the muzzle when it's inside, you put the muzzle on the outside. Mahu. What's the halacha? Do we say shor b'disho rachman amar rachmana? That the Torah only said shor b'disho, and here it's lav b'disho. At the end of the day, it's not right now. So from the morning, I already know I'm going to plow today. I put it in its muzzle, and all day it's just muzzled, and then I come and I do the plowing. Oh, dilma, or maybe lo tadush b'chasima marachmana. Even though it says lo tachshor m'shabed disha, it just means that at the time of doing the disha, you're not allowed to have it muzzled. So that's the question. So Elmaleh, he says, mi bet avicha, from the family of Aaron HaKohen, we could already learn a Talamed. It says, Yain v'shechal al tesh tavunecha itach bevoachem. What does that mean? They're not allowed to drink, whether it's going to be wine or any other alcoholic beverages, right? Whether it's going to be you, your children, when they're going to come to serve in the Ol Moed. So says the Gemara, bevoachem udasur hamishta umeal shari. Says one second. When it says bevoachem, you're only not allowed to eat inside the Bet HaMikdash, right, or inside the Mishkan, but outside you could eat, you could drink, and there's no problem, and then come inside, right? It says, right? He says, the Torah says in the next pasuk that there's going to be the time of the Isur is in order to differentiate between avodah, right, which is kiddush, right, kiddusha, it's something of kadosh, and avodah, which is mechulelet. Elamahat, I'm just like over there, beshat biyah, lo ter shichrut. When you come inside, it cannot be drunk. So to here, hachenami. B'shadisha lo techasima. So he comes and he says, I already learned it from, right, Aaron HaKohen. Right? Because Rabbi Yonatan was actually a Kohen. So he says, I learned it from your family. I learned the answer from you. Right? He was the one that answered the question. He comes and he says, right, I have the answer from you. Fine. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. 1 second. What? 1 second. We're almost done. He comes and he says this. Tanu Rabbanan. Right? We learned in Braita. If we're going to come and we're going to be chosem the para, right? Ve'amzaveg bekilaim. So, right, he's not doing it himself, right? Somebody else is doing it. Meaning, one person does the chasima, and one person is doing. Yes, exactly. Right? Or amzaveg bekilaim. Right? You're going to put two different animals, right, together, right? But somebody else is doing it. You're going to be patur. Yeah, you're going to be patur. Why? Because when it says, right, that it has to be done, we're talking about two animals that are done together, right, that you're doing it. But here, you only just tie them together, one person, and then somebody else did the melacha. So therefore, right, the first person is not going to be chayav, the malkut. So the only one that's going to be lokeh is the one that's going to do the disha, right, bilvad. Okay, which means that you only get, when it's only going to be two together, that's when you're going to be chayav, but not in anything else. Because it's only by Shabbat that you're patur. Because it's only by Shabbat, not anywhere else. Itmar, it was stated, chasama. If right now, right, chasama bekol, right, what does that mean, chasama bekol? He says, what happens right now, if you're chosem, only the kol, which means when it comes and puts up its head, right, in order, God, you scream at it. You didn't stop it. You didn't put a muzzle, right? You didn't put a muzzle, right? Viniga bekol, right? Or you come and you put the two of them together, and you're being maniga bekol. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan says, you're going to be chayav. And then Shakish says, you're going to be patur. The Gemara says, Yochanan says, you're going to be chayav because akima pi vav yamase. He says, the fact that you came and you screamed at it, that's already considered a maaseh, and that's why you're going to be chayav. But the Shakish says, you're going to be patur because you didn't do an action. Meaning, you did a muzzle. Fine, you screamed at it. Fine. But you didn't.
So he learned it. Like,
no, you didn't be called. You screamed at it. You're not hitting him. You're not hitting. You're just screaming at it. So he says you didn't do an action. The machloket is screaming considered an action or not. If you consider an action, you did chasima. If it's not considered an action, you didn't do chasima. The second one, which is to do with, right, and therefore the same halakha applies to the hanaga also, which is the kilaim. Okay, and then obviously we're going to continue, right, with the next question, which is going to be the next one, which is, are you allowed to do it or not?